Welcome to Tales About the Table, where we explore the stories, challenges, and creative chaos of TTRPGs, but mostly D&D. I'm Elijah.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Josiah. Together, we discuss the art of DMing, character building, and making unforgettable moments at the table.
Each episode, we break down a different aspect of tabletop gaming, sharing our experiences, lessons learned, and maybe a few funny failures along the way. Whether you're a seasoned DM or you're just rolling your first set of dice, there's always more to learn about collaborative storytelling.
Sometimes we talk about how to play TTRPGs, the rules, the setup, and everything in between.
Sometimes we talk about how to be better people and communicators, and therefore, better players.
And sometimes we talk about our own misadventures and the lessons that we've learned from the worlds we've created.
But most importantly, we love telling great stories together.
So pull up a chair and join us as we share another of our many tales about the table. Hello and welcome back to Tales Improvised About the Table. Today we are going to be talking about who knows what. We have a bunch of questions that we have for one another that we're going to kind of throw out there. And yeah, who knows where this conversation will go. I am your host Elijah, joined as always by Jack and Josiah. And yeah, let's jump into it. If we're talking D&D, there are just tons of characters left, right, and in front of you. You're playing a character, and I am a huge proponent of like memorable characters. Maybe for like deep impact reasons, maybe for hysterical voices, or just these moments that like, oh wow, I remember this character and they really stuck out. So my question for you guys, that I will go ahead and start by answering, but my question is, what is a character? This can be a player, this can be an NPC, but a character from a campaign that has stuck with you long after the story has ended or the campaign has ended, or maybe that you like think of all the time while you're currently playing. And for me, that character is one of Jack's player characters, Cecil. And Cecil stuck with me for like a number of reasons, but he was a homebrewed Coatl that was an allowed player character and was a child. And so that like there were a ton of dynamics, not just in the campaign of like, okay, he's a child and then he had a surrogate father that was also playing in the campaign, but the growth that Jack's character went through and the impact and the care that he had for other people in the campaign. And it was one of the first campaigns that I really remember a lot of the details from. My first 3 or 4 campaigns, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so it was, just a smattering of, oh, here's a couple of monsters, here's some NPCs, here's a town, go into the danger. Whereas this was like a character that had a really profound impact. And I like Jack's character, his goal was to basically write the song of the universe. And so like as a child, that's an insane goal. And yet he still like managed to pursue that while still being very childlike and filled with a childlike wonder and interested in just different things than your typical D&D character. And I like genuinely think about that campaign. I think about Cecil as a character probably at least once a month, sometimes more. Like that character has like really stuck with me as a character that I got to watch as a DM, which was just a ton of fun. So yeah,
I am going to take the more gimmicky route here. I can't actually say this character's full name on this podcast. But Jasper the Fisherman is one that I really do think about a decent amount.
I thought you were going to say Jump-a-Gump.
Jump-a-Gump. No, not Jump-a-Gump, but that was also
man.
funny. That is a character. Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, Jasper the Fisherman. There was, maybe there's more to his title, but again, I can't really say it on our podcast. But I recall him. So he was a complete gimmick character. He flipped a coin to make decisions, which led to no end of frustration to Elijah as he's running this campaign, as he he made decisions very quickly, but they were never predictable.
And let me say, also to clarify, a one-shot. This was not like a campaign.
It turned into like a 3 or 4 shot.
It did turn into
it was
a couple
longer-ish thing. Which
was supposed to be one
I
session.
was okay with it being such a gimmicky character. I don't know if I'd play this in a campaign. But yeah, we were running, I think it was one of the Candle Keep Mystery short campaigns. And I remember this character mainly because he was such a gimmick. And then at the very end, like, his gimmick really just had this cathartic moment of coming full circle as he, like, kind of shouts his catchphrase, his name, as he, like, stabs this giant spider and, like, drops 20 stories with it. And it just was like, that was one of those, like, really short, one-off, completely a joke characters that still had such a, like, cathartic ending. And I remember, like, man, that was really fun. That is a character that sticks with you after playing it for such a short amount of time. Definitely not, like, one of my favorite characters ever, but it is kind of interesting how some of those, like, things stick a little bit more. So I think he would be the one I'd pick there.
That's very fun. Man, this is hard because I think for me, when I think of characters, so much of what I'm thinking of is actually the people playing them. I find that a lot of people, just in general, end up sort of playing themselves in their characters, or one aspect of themselves, one, like, small piece of how they would do things. Or they lean into the exact opposite direction, and that's kind of like, you can look at the opposites to see who they are, and that's always fun. But so for me, it's hard to, like, pinpointing a character when, especially because a lot of the players I've played with through multiple different campaigns. So when I think of their character, I'm, like, thinking of, like, a myriad of, like, a few different people all meshed together. But I'm not gonna pick a third of Jack's characters, so I'm gonna go in a different direction.
That's right.
But
we're all obsessed with the characters that Jack continues to make.
I actually wasn't gonna go with one of Jack's characters.
That's very funny.
Although I very easily could. The one that really came to mind for me was actually a villain. For me, it was Jorian. Now, Jorian was a vampire, and probably the character that I have hated the most, and which is just a good character. If you hate a character, it's really good. That's just a well-built character. About 80% of the time, the other 20% of the time, you hate a character for how poorly it was written at Star Wars sequel trilogy. Anyways,
I literally was thinking the same thing.
Anyways,
we're gonna try to be a D&D podcast, so we're not gonna go down that rabbit trail.
But if you want us to go down that, it's when we're improvising that we could talk about Star Wars.
I just had a long conversation yesterday with a group of people where we were ranking all of the Star Wars movies, including Rogue One and Solo.
I did too. That is
yesterday.
Wild. Not yesterday.
Okay. Sunday.
It was
Sunday
in the last week.
Sunday was May the 4th be with you. So it was Star Wars Day. So everyone's on the Star Wars train.
I honestly, I just randomly came up at work the other day. Have you guys? We are going to side tangent just a little bit. I'm so sorry.
We are improvising. Let's go.
Have you guys ever seen the YouTube video? It's like Star Wars. It's poetry. It's like 2 minutes long.
Yeah,
and
we're gonna stop here. We're gonna watch it.
No,
okay, maybe not. But if you haven't, please go watch this video.
It truly will change your perspective on Star Wars original trilogy and the Star Wars sequel movies.
You're not gonna pull it up. We're not gonna watch it right now.
No. We're not watching it right now. It's like poetry. They rhyme. Wait, no. It's like poetry. That's the name of it. It's Star Wars poetry.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That video. Oh man. Anyway, you're just talking about that. That's what brought up Star Wars for me the other day. Was we were talking about that video. Anyway,
very fun.
Nice.
Anyways, original trilogy, Ride or Die. So anyways, hated characters are good usually. So Jorian, this vampire, was a character I feel like designed for me to hate them. Partially because at every turn, this character came for everything that I cared about. And in every way that I went and set out to preserve the things that my character cared about, I was always cut short and my legs were swept out from under me, making me just incredibly angry and frustrated with my inability to perform. A very, very Moriarty to Sherlock-esque. And so this character just like it, because there's more to being a villain than just like taking away agency or like removing your ability to do the things that you want to do. Because you could do that and that would just be frustrating. It wouldn't necessarily be like angering. What happened well with Jorian was it was clear that his character was built in a way that he understood the things that were important to my character. It made my character feel known to me that the things that I wanted were being taken. And so I had to like adapt and adjust to that. And ultimately I bought an army, stormed his castle, and beat his face in with a pistol. Anyways, yeah.
We can't say Jasper the Fisher on this podcast.
No, we can't say it. Anyways, no, great character. I'm wondering, like, so we talk about these characters. What is it about them that makes them more memorable than others? Because we could say good things about a ton of characters.
For sure.
What makes these characters memorable?
I will say for me, I think it is a combination of time and place of like, hey, this was very transitional for me because at the time I was playing D&D with upperclassmen in college. And so it was like, oh, wow, like these are, people that I don't know super well, but are interested in playing D&D with me and are really like becoming really close friends. I mean, that was the first campaign that I played with Jack. And now it's like I have played D&D with Jack more than anyone else by a long, long shot, and I think that part of the reason for that is definitely like, oh yeah, this was in college. This was early, it was just post COVID. And so I think that has something to do with it. But I also think that it is the climax of that story and that campaign were very satisfying. And I have not had that catharsis or that like nice bow wrapping for a character in all of my campaigns. I've had it for certain characters that have died and like gotten a really nice send off. I remember running Godfrey in the Curse of Strahd. I was just gonna
say, as soon as you started talking about it, I was like, oh, that's a good decision.
It was really nice to like, hey, you guys defeated Strahd, And so, spoiler alert for the Curse of Strahd, but Sir Godfrey is a revenant, and so when Strahd is defeated, his soul can finally rest.
Yeah.
And so I got to kind of like play out this like moment where Godfrey kind of looks out on Barovia and like is at peace, and then and that was just a really fun time. But it was really cool to see a player get a satisfying ending, and to really like wrap this story up. And it was, yeah, I think that for me was really one of the big things of like when I think of Cecil, I get to think of like beginning, middle, and end,
Yeah.
which is something that is hugely helpful for me. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think my favorite
Right.
characters have a beginning, middle, and end.
I'm honestly, that was very much the direction I was going to go. I was going to say, if you look at all the characters we just talked about, and the other ones that came to mind for me, for example, we played with a guy named Noah a while back, and he
I was
had
also going to bring
monk,
up Noah.
and he had a monk that he played, and we played 24 hours straight one time in a campaign. And he kept, at the very beginning of that campaign, he kept making comments about like he was missing something and he couldn't find his pocket. And then he multi-classed partway through the campaign, because we leveled up multiple times in that 24 hours. He multi-classed into Genie Warlock. And he like reaches into this extra dimensional space that he has and pulls something, I forget what it was, out of the pocket. But he had like set up for that so well. And there was this really cool like, oh, full circle moment.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're saying when we say, you know, that cathartic, that like tying a bow, that full circle moment. It was set up, there was the build up, and there was the payoff. And I think that's why Jasper was a memorable character. I think that's why Cecil was a memorable character. And I think that's why Jorian was a memorable character, even in a lot of ways. Like there was a reference, a build up, and a payoff at the end of all of those.
Right.
And I think that is really important, because a lot of D&D characters can be awesome and super super cool characters and don't end up being all that memorable, because a lot of D&D campaigns don't get endings or those bow tying moments for
Right.
those characters.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, on that same, like, because I think you picked up on the second thing that Elijah said. I think that's great, and you're absolutely right. The first thing that Elijah said, I think, is also very relevant. Of he brought up how it was just like the right season in his life, and like it meant something more to him at that time. And like as I think about Jorian, one of the things that is big for me is like that is a character that evoked some sort of emotion or real world reaction from me.
Mm.
And so like as I think through a lot of these characters, like sometimes even those gimmicky characters, the reason that a lot of these characters are memorable is because I distinctly remember a really funny joke that this character said, or where everyone at the table laughed, or like a really good moment here where we spent a lot of time. Like I really felt enraptured in that moment. For me, that like emotional connection is immediately tied to it. And sometimes like that is just because of where you're at, like what season of life you're in, what's going on, things like that. And those things I think do play into the characters. And even though it's like impossible to write that, like you can't write what seasons of life you're gonna be in. It does play into the fact that certain characters will just mean more because of the season of life you're in at that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Totally fair.
As an in-between question, unless we had anything else we wanted to say, this will just be a short one-off question. But what would you guys say is your favorite D&D class and why?
It's sorcerer, I think. I am slowly transitioning over to wizard.
I was gonna
as
say,
my favorite
I was curious
class.
to see what you answered there.
It's been sorcerer for the longest time. and part of it is just simply because I love casting spells, but I also am a natural talker, and so I want to have a high charisma stat so that when I'm talking at the table, I don't roll and have a negative consequence because I have a -1 to my charisma, and I, like that.
Mhm.
That can be kind of difficult, but
Yeah.
yeah, I love spellcasters. I love the fantasy of just being able to cast spells, and just imagining what it feels like to shoot a fireball out of your hand, or any sorts of different things. So yeah, I would say probably sorcerer, but we're slowly moving the needle over towards
Yeah.
wizard, as
Interesting.
far as favorite class goes.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I have to say fighter.
You don't have to say it. Yeah, it could be
I
what
mean,
you're
it-
feeling right now.
But
It is
Josiah
what I
has played a
play.
fighter in every
Yes.
single
It's
campaign.
like everyone. I loved my fighter cleric. I think fighter
Yeah.
cleric is just a really, really fun combo to do.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
just rounds you out in such a fun way where you're able to be prevalent in combat, but you have the healing spells. You have the ability to do a little
Mhm.
more like buffing of other players. Just fun. But I also love cantrips. I'm such a cantrip player. I think one of my favorite builds was a build that at level 1 I took a background
I
that
know where you're
gave
going with
me
this.
I took a background that gave me like
It was
a spell initiate.
Strixhaven
I
stuff.
took
Strixhaven.
I took Strixhaven initiate. I took a feat to get magic initiate. And I took and I was a and I was a bard. So I was like, I'm going to amass as many cantrips as possible. I'm going to
Yeah.
be able to have. I'm just gonna like full mass all of the cantrips. It was very fun. One of my favorites for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, that is very cool.
Was
I
that
would
Max and
say
Chad?
that was
I do that
Max
with
and
Max
Chad.
and
Say,
Chad.
Yeah.
that was
which
once
is
again second
crazy.
Noah character making
Oh,
it into the
man.
podcast today. Shout out
Dude, what a
Noah if you're
ridiculous-
listening.
Okay, part of that is I literally ran into him the other day, and so I was
Oh,
like
that's so
thinking
great.
a lot about
So
that.
good.
But we shouldn't talk about that on the podcast. Anyway,
It's fine.
I would say
There
for
now.
me, the obvious one is Warlock.
Yeah.
That is clearly the one that I really love. But I would say my first love as a class was definitely Bard. Like, I really do like Cecil was a Bard, and I've been itching to go back and play one. Bards have a rough early game, and so that is what always kind of scares me away from them, is they're just a little bit on the weaker side in the early game. But I really, if I could choose a class to take into the late game and play for a really long time, it would be Bard.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
it is just, you got the skill monkey side of it. You have a bunch of fun and cool abilities. The subclasses are often really well built. You get to be a full spellcaster. You get more versatility as a spellcaster than nearly anyone in the entire game. And like, there's just a lot of it that's really fun to lean into. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that they rank under Warlock. I like Warlock the most. I really enjoy its play style. I will say I would play. I think I like Warlocks more when we're playing in smaller groups, because you're so reliant on short rests. And in small groups, it's like, hey, you want a short rest? Sure. And in a large group, it's like a huge ordeal at times where it's like, oh, everybody, we got a short rest here and get everyone to sign off on it. And so I think Warlocks, when I see a lot of people complain online about them, I'm like, you are playing in a very large group, and I wonder if that has something to do with why you don't like them. But yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and jump on with the second question. So
Amazing.
So I'm going to bring us into the topic, and really what I want to talk about is why we think D&D is having this surge of popularity right now, and why people enjoy it. Like, what is it about D&D or tabletop RPGs as a whole that like is really doing something that people are excited about, that it's like a lot of fun or different things. For me, and this is really just me thinking about things I don't know that I really have any like, anything to back up this claim, but I really think one of the reasons why D&D is hitting this surge of popularity is because it is an example uh of long form content of like being a successful, well built long form content. Because what it is doing, it is taking these short stories that everyone is used to and is playing them out at a much broader scale that we used to be significantly used to in like books and there used to be such a huge culture around these long spanning stories where you are engaged and you are dedicated to these characters and you are long built into them. And it just feels like we're not really engaging with that nearly as much anymore because content continues to get shorter and shorter and shorter. And what we're used to more often than not is a movie. And when you're turning a book that takes like days to read into a single 2.5 hour movie, you lose so much of what yeah, it doesn't take Elijah days to read. Elijah has the ability to read faster than anyone else. We're not going to talk about that.
I definitely winked. This is an audio podcast, and no one else saw that.
Yeah.
I broke Josiah.
He winked
so,
like
sorry.
this big.
Yeah,
I know that doesn't mean anything. Anyways, no, I really think. Oh man, I really think that the long form content does a lot, and it like really latches onto people when they're hearing these characters, they're getting connected with them, and they're able to connect with them for long periods of time, not just in these short stints. And I think another place that we see this playing out is the reason why anime also feels so different from a lot of regular, a lot of more common American media. Because what it is doing, it is anime more often than not is not focused on delivering a perfect episode to you every time, where your watching experience is dialed in to this specific episode. Anime is way more concerned about the story at large, telling you a broader arc, a whole concept, and really bringing you along. That's the reason why you'll spend 15 episodes on a single combat in anime, because they're like, no, you need to be with this character through every piece of this. We're going to walk you through. We don't have to give you this combat in a short and snippy single episode. We're gonna draw this out. And D&D is doing very similar things where, hey, we spent 6 sessions in one dungeon and we like barely made it through.
Mhm.
Like we spend a lot more time not trying to necessarily deliver a perfect deliverable, but really having you walk through everything with these characters. And that feels more real, I think, often than like that you haven't missed anything. Whereas in movies, you're like, you jump cut and you're like, yeah, maybe I like kind of care about this character. But like when you're with the character for the whole time, you like can maybe connect to them more. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point.
That is
but
interesting, and I do think it's interesting too. There's a genre of literature that has become more popular recently called lit RPGs, and if you read a lot of them, they often it's almost kind of slice of life in the sense of like their goal is often to like kind of level up and survive, and they'll have multiple goals throughout the story, spanning a couple of books of, oh, I'm trying to do this thing and I'm trying to do that thing. And I think anime, D&D, that genre of books all do a really good job of like, here's some pie in the sky, maybe we'll get there at level 20, underlying current to your whole story. But in between, we're focused on like the small little stories and things like that. And I do really see a lot of that with D&D. I was actually going to go in a different direction and go the far more literal sense of like, here's the history. I'm a bit of a history nerd, and I love that
nice.
part of D&D. And so I can inform you a little bit of like, where the steps to this becoming what it has have taken place. Obviously it started out as like, war games where they were trying to teach generals how to be better generals with, essentially giving them these scenarios and having them deal with it. And that, developed from there. And in the 70s with them first creating D&D. But D&D has had an insane amount of staying power since then. Like, it should have probably died. I mean, like, the Satanic Panic kind of helped it in some ways. Like, it caused a lot of kids to be like, oh, people, adults don't like this. I gotta try this. Maybe made it seem cooler than it actually is at times. But I do think it was really interesting that like it fell out of the public eye for a long time. Like, that kind of all quieted down, and it still was a game. It still was going strong. It had a very dedicated, if small, community. But even like, it grew pretty significantly from where it was at. And there were quite a few people that were still playing it and wanting to be a part of it. And 3.5 was kind of this, mountaintop a little bit, and it started to decline with the bloat of 3.5. And then, fourth edition came along and it didn't quite do what they wanted. And
Don't
then
disrespect my fourth edition.
I just
You are
said
the
it was
only
do what
person.
they wanted.
You are the only
I
person defending
tried
fourth edition.
being really
I want you guys to know,
respectful.
fourth edition was the first edition of D&D that I played. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Fifth edition is better. I have to always defend it whenever Jack's like the decline into fourth edition, because it was a decline. I won't deny that.
And a lot of people, the hobby itself continued to grow because of Pathfinder, not because of D&D at that point. A lot of people had switched over to Pathfinder, and then Pathfinder second edition. Like, it was filling a niche that like D&D was kind of struggling with. And that was where D&D was, it kind of was a really healthy thing, because it kind of broke D&D from needing to, like, they could kind of experiment. They were like, look, what we're doing isn't working. We don't want to just throw out another 3.5 clone. All the people playing 3.5 are still playing 3.5. We need a new audience. And I heard, I think it was Mike Merles talking about this in a podcast, or in an interview that I saw him with later. He was one of the lead designers for 5th edition and then had since left the team. And he was talking about like how when they were designing it, they were kind of like, we've already, like Paizo Pathfinder's beating us in a lot of ways and is already given the cleaned up version of 3.5. They've already, taken a big part of that player base, and we're not going to give it back by throwing out another clone of that. We need to look for a new audience that can and appeal to this old audience. And the way we're going to do that is a streamlined rule set that is easier to learn, that is more accessible, and that, anybody can play. And you don't have to be like, it can get you into the game. We want new people to be able to play this game. And so 2014, they come out with 5th edition, and it wasn't a huge success year one. A lot of people, it takes a long time for people to switch editions. In fact, we're seeing that right now with 2024, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's failing. And it's like, yeah, that's happened before. Like, a lot of people are in the middle of years long campaigns, and you're not going to switch systems in the middle of that. You probably are like going to wait until you finish that before you'd make any sort of transition, and wait to see if it's worth it. And if it's it takes a lot of effort to even learn, shifted rules and stuff like that. But 5th edition really did end up catching on. And then obviously with, the big TV show of Stranger Things really played a big part of it. Critical Role and COVID. And those three things historically were like, you can see the rise of TTRPGs with kind of like entering some of the modern eye. A lot of people had played it as kids and been like, that was so fun and cool. And then like as an adult, they're like, oh, people still play this? That's kind of cool. Like, maybe I'll try that again, especially during COVID. And that led to a big part of the like just extreme success it's seen recently. Anyway, that's from all the stuff I've learned and heard about it. So that's somewhat backed up by evidence.
Yeah. So Jack gave the right answer.
Yeah, that's not what I'm asking.
But yeah, I was gonna say, I definitely like, I see that, and I definitely like, I think that, yeah, Stranger Things, Critical Role, and COVID kind of being that perfect storm of like bringing D&D into the spotlight, bringing D&D into an accessible kind of medium. And there have been other things. I don't want to like sit here and be like, it's those three things only. Like, yes, a lot of people got into D&D
Totally.
from Dimension 20. A lot of people got into D&D from the Dungeon Dudes. Like, it is not just
and
those
it
things.
Being an accessible system was a big part of that too, for sure.
I do think that to me, right, from my perspective, I think that one of the big things that I have really seen is the world is kind of a mess right now. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but there's just a lot going on. And D&D provides escapism in a very unique way, right?
I was hoping you would go here.
Reading a book reading a book is one form of escapism, right? Watching a movie is one form of escapism. But there is something very personal about taking on the persona of a character, kind of putting it on like a coat and saying, okay, I am this character in this world with other problems. And one of the things that I have seen, and I like just from DMing a lot, just from talking with people, there is a love of the escapism, not just of like, oh, I don't have to think about work right now, and so I love D&D for that reason. But there is something really, really profound about being in a world that still has plenty of problems that are able to be overcome. Because there are problems that we face in our day-to-day lives that do not feel surmountable, that do not feel like we can overcome them. And not to get like really deep and serious, but like if that is where you are at listening to this podcast, like, I'm sorry, and I can't like help you make it through, but like that is a real place, and I hope that you can find ways to overcome the real world. And I will say that like there have been times that D&D has been that for me. There have been times that I just play D&D like a board game, and there have been times that D&D is like my outlet for creativity. But I think one of the big things in its rise in popularity has been that D&D is unlike a book or a movie or anything else, any other kind of media. D&D is a tool. I'm thinking now of Phineas and Ferb, and the it's a platypus. It doesn't do much, and it's the toy, and it's like it can be a bucking bronco. It can be sci-fi. It can be a western. It can be steampunk. It can be
Tango.
True fantasy. You can do anything that you want with Dungeons and Dragons, and that medium for being able to step out of this world and into a new world, and you can do that at the snap of a finger, right? You can just be like, I think so often of like the times that we're all sitting around a table and we're talking, and like it's that time right before Dungeons and Dragons starts where you're like, oh, like how was your week and everything, and then the DM kind of goes, all right, and everyone like steps into the world, and there is like this moment where like everyone's head kind of turns a little bit. Some people like look down and kind of get into character. That moment I live for one. It is so cool to like watch everyone kind of come into this world that is no longer ours, right? And also, that moment is kind of the like most precious thing, I think, in D&D, because it is something that you get to share with someone, right? We all love Star Wars, but we don't share Star Wars the same way that we share a D&D.
Yeah.
We all love Lord of the Rings, but we don't get to share that the same way that we get to share Tethemathia, and that place that, like, I would say, like, I've been to in a weird way,
Right.
right? Like, I haven't physically been there, but mentally, and like, I can imagine what it sounds like, smells like, everything. And so
The fish from the market, the smelliest fish I could find. Oh gosh. Anyways, moving on.
Wild.
But yeah, I think I definitely, yes, I think that there was a perfect storm of accessibility, popularity, and social and media that kind of pushed it into popularity. But I do really think that D&D right now is so it is like this, like, really awesome game that is like, hey, come play, right? Like, there isn't Jack and I have been talking a lot recently about, like, how D&D, really all you need at this point is, like, pencil, paper, and access to the internet. Like, it doesn't take a whole lot. You don't have to, figure out, oh, I need every rule book. It's like, no, there's a wiki dot for that. Go to Roll20 Compendium, like, whatever your choice of media is there. Like, it's there. It's out
Hey
there.
Google, roll
Yeah.
a d20 for me.
Exactly.
It's done.
And so there is this awesome place where D&D has hit popularity because it is a very easily accessible thing for everyone to be anything. And, like, you can't just sell a product and be like, this is anything. But, like, I truly, like, when I've talked about when I think about D&D, it's like D&D is anything. Like, it can be any kind of world. It can be as, like, close to this world or as far from it as you desire. And I think that is an absolutely unbelievable product that I will love forever. So
Totally.
I'm definitely going to be thinking about that Phineas and Ferb episode for the next several hours now.
Of course.
So the whole dialogue is
no,
going
the
through
three
my
of us
head.
are just going to sit down and watch that right after this episode. I don't know what you're talking about.
Classic. Anyways,
So another fun little in between
Transition question.
short
Woo!
one. And I feel like it kind of goes along with this well. But
Okay.
What is your favorite piece of media that has influenced your D&D characters or DMing that you draw inspiration from?
So I'll jump on right away and just get this out of the way. It's not necessarily my favorite, but I will say I think that my other players, though they have never listened to the podcast, I do think that my friends here are most influenced by Dungeons and Daddies. And I say that because as we were playing our campaign, and I'm listening through this series over and over and over, there's too many coincidences of we're doing the same exact things back to back to back. But it is completely
I would like to say
coincidental.
that
It
I
had to
did
be.
not
Anyways,
actually listen to that.
it's
gonna say.
completely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
after we finished that campaign, I was like, I gotta see what Josiah was talking about, and I only made it like 10 episodes in or
I
something.
think Dungeons and Daddy was actually copying us.
Yeah.
because
it
we were
went back
doing it
and we-
before.
Yeah.
That's
We
Yeah,
also
they
we also
somehow
played
were listening
a lot
in.
a lot more through
Yeah.
time than their anyway.
A lot of media has directly represented the way that I play Dungeons and Daddies. What am I even saying? The way that I play D&D
Yeah,
is
wow. I don't know
very
that game.
influenced
man.
by media.
That's funny.
It's got to be anime, though. Like,
Yeah.
there have been several times where I've been like, "Wow, I am playing this character," or "Wow, that is definitely what I'm leaning into." I think Mushoku Tensei, which is Jobless Reincarnated, definitely had a lot of inspiration from those characters. I don't even fully remember what it was, but I remember over and over being like, "Oh yeah, that was going on," or different things like that. And I'm sure that my memory's bad, so maybe these guys remember other animes. But there's been a lot of times where,
Yeah.
like I said, long form content, very applicable. Anyways.
Yeah, totally. I think that
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say it looked like you wanted some more time to think.
I'm really thinking.
I have one. I would say honestly, the one that has really deeply affected me, like if we take like depending on how you define kind of media and characters,
Yeah.
like the Dungeons of Drakkenheim is definitely kind of up there, but that's a little too on the nose. Like Matthew Colville's stuff is a little too on the nose. You know, both those had a
Sure.
huge impact on me. I would say if we stray more into like stories and stuff like that, honestly, I've gotten into a lot of lit RPG. I brought this up kind of earlier, but like I've read a lot of it recently.
He was foreshadowing.
I was foreshadowing, giving you a
had this
cathartic
question.
moment where it all comes together. No, I'm kidding.
Oh man.
But
People aren't going to believe that we improvised this.
Jack is my favorite D&D character.
But specifically, like there have been a couple of different series, like Dungeon Life. I'm currently reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, and it's really cool to see people take essentially RPG mechanics and make them make a lot of sense in their written worlds where they're the author and truly coming up with everything. And it is really fun. Like that gives me just so much inspiration for how you can walk that line of not railroading, but still being able to drive your party forward, especially in a larger group that maybe isn't all going to agree, or can't be as character motivated in every session, and like when to take away agency, when to really lean into their agency, when to have things for them to react to, and when to lean into their character arcs. And I feel like a lot of that has come from reading a lot of lit RPGs, and that has been kind of fun. So I think that's what I would say is had a pretty big impact on me currently, at least.
Nice.
All right, this is gonna be a little weird, but I think the thing that has like inspired the most of like my D&D, especially as a DM,
It's a Bible.
well, that's up there. It is, spoiler alert for Avengers Endgame, but it is the moment when Captain America picks up Mjolnir and it like snaps back to him. Specifically, like the feeling that I had when I watched it for the first time in the theater, because I was at like the earliest possible showing of that movie in a packed out theater, and I remember seeing it, and me and like 18 other people that I did not know all cheering, jumping to our feet. I hugged a dude that I have not seen before and have not seen since, right? Like it was this awesome moment. And I say that because that is what I am like chasing when I am writing D&D, when I am playing D&D, is like that awesome feeling, not necessarily like only for myself. Like I don't need to be Captain America in that moment, but I want to, at my table, get to these moments where when the die hits a 20 and everything shifts, like everything goes from, oh, maybe the villain actually is a little bit too powerful. And it's like, oh, you don't even realize I have this. And I roll a crit. I pull out, I can think of moments I can think of moments in the campaigns that I've run where I've gotten that feeling. And like in the Curse of Strahd, when it was like, all right, and then I am going to drop this and pull out, and it was like, okay, we're getting real serious. And it was, I think that is like what I am super inspired by in D&D, is like that can happen in every campaign, and it doesn't like it's not going to happen every session, but we're building to it in a lot of these campaigns, and I'm really yeah, I think that is like the big thing for me. So
Yeah. All right, last big question here. I think we got enough
okay.
time to answer it.
Oh yeah.
Um, but what do you guys think? I actually this came from literally I was watching a video about it today, and it inspired me a lot. So I'll probably give a little bit of an answer here at the beginning, but like, what do you guys think about rolling in the open as a DM?
Hmm.
And I've thought about this before, and I've been like, nah, I don't want to do that. Like, there's just this place. But then I was like, thinking about it from a player's perspective and the weight of being able to see every single die roll that the DM does. And, there are still ways for you as a DM to adjust things, who you attack, the CR of monsters you're throwing at people, the morale, how whether they break and run, whatever it is. There's still other ways, but there is a, a way where when you do that, when you roll in the open, you essentially are kind of saying to your players, hey, none of us are truly in control here. Like, this story is something we are all experiencing together. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I've been thinking about it kind of since then. And I was like, I think I could really like that as a DM. I know some of my players would definitely feel uncomfortable with it at the beginning. And my players in the campaign I'm currently running are new enough. I don't know if I would do it with them. I don't know if they're the group to experiment with. But what are your guys' thoughts about like just straight up rolling in the open? Being kind of upfront about like armor classes or to hit bonuses. What do you guys think about that?
I have thoughts for sure. I'll go first because I have a lot of thoughts. My first knee jerk reaction is like absolutely not, no, and there's a lot of reasons for it. And one of them is actually, as a player, I don't want to see your dice. I don't want to know. I want that air of mystery to be, and there's something weird about it because like I know Jack and Jack knows me, and neither of us like to fudge our dice. So it really doesn't matter. Like I'm just receiving true information based on and modifiers, and so it's not like a huge deal. But there is something mysterious. I have always loved like when the DM rolls a d20, it doesn't tell you what it's for, and doesn't tell you what's happening, and it's like, what's going on? Like that is super fun as a way to build tension, as a way to kind of see these things, like feel a lot of things going on in the world without actually knowing. Oh yeah, that there's these things that are going on in the world. And so yeah, I think my first reaction is like, I personally don't think that I would enjoy that. However, there is also a place where, as a DM, like especially playing with players who are optimized and have high ACs, and it's like, okay, I have a +7 to hit. Does this hit? Nope. Okay, cool. We can like move on. And in those combats that are not those like, oh, this is a boss fight and like there are some big things going on here. In those, so there's a time that I think I would be like, yeah, that's fine. Like I don't really mind it.
Hmm.
But I think personally there is like, as a player I'm like, no, I definitely want that to still exist.
Yeah.
As a DM, I'm like,
Interesting.
I don't see, I do see like from a DM's perspective, I kind of am like, yeah, no, I think that's fine. Like, if they see everything that I'm rolling, like I don't have anything to hide when I am saying this, which is weird because typically
Hmm.
it's like, well, you can't know what's here, like,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, I think that it makes the DM feel like an arbiter and a narrator a little bit more, because it's like, hey, and now the world happens. right? And
Mhm.
we don't see how the world happens. Um, and I think that
Yeah.
that was actually shout out me. That was really profound. I that like came and I was like, no, that actually is. It's like the DM makes the entire world occur, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just sitting around rolling dice. And so behind the screen and not seeing it, I actually really like that a lot more from a player's perspective. And I understand. And now as a DM, I'm like, no, I don't want to show my players all my rolls.
Yeah. So I'm going to push back.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I like what you said and it's all good stuff. But I think a lot of those things could be flipped on their head and still be true.
Sure.
Like, for example, you were like, man, when I roll a dice and the players can't see and they're like, what's going on? Could you imagine if I, stand up, roll a dice in the middle of the table? You all get to see the results. I nod, I pick up the dice and put it back behind the screen. Like there is this place where it's like, oh no, that ratcheted up the tension. Like there is an
Yeah.
even more obvious way that I'm showing something's happening, and I also think I would totally agree with your statement that there is a place, because in older editions of D&D, like only the DM rolled and it was a covered roll. And it was like, there were even like, at the very beginning, they would advise DMs sometimes to be completely hidden, where the players couldn't see them at all, because they are the
Terrible.
arbitrators of this world, and you don't get to, like you want to remove the DM as a person because they're experiencing this world. They're not experiencing the
I would
DM.
love to play D&D that way with you
That
guys
is
at some point.
insane.
That would be hilarious.
Very much not.
But there is a cool part of it. I do
Yeah.
think there is an interesting and cool part of that. And to be completely honest, I've never tried it. So I don't want to fully judge it and say that's going to be awful. In my head, that sounds awful. But
Yeah.
like,
Hey, you guys want to go play D&D in a confessional and we can't hear the priest?
No, but like imagine
What?
like you're just sitting at a table and you
Uh,
hear a voice like that. There is more ambiance that's very interesting to me in that.
I do think there would be
regard.
something very interesting. Or not ever rolling any dice and playing D&D. The DM
Yeah.
rolls all the dice. I
Mhm.
think that would be really fascinating. That's a
Okay, I try to hit him.
That's
You
taking
miss.
Yeah.
I try to hit him again. You miss. I guess I gotta just keep trying.
I do think that would be a poor way to do it. If you're going to do it, I would really dress up the language of like
Yeah.
the interactions of like,
You miss
you
wide
stab
left.
forward, the guy die,
You miss wide
dodges,
right.
But I do
He
think that
kills
would be
you.
fascinating. And the truth of the matter is, I haven't tried that, and so there is a place where it's like, I don't totally know how this would go. Maybe I'd try it and wouldn't like it. Who knows? But I do think, specifically with rolling, dice, and I do think there is a place where it can, as you were saying, Elijah, make the world feel more real and feel more, like less game mechanics, less visible game mechanics can lend to some of the immersion. But I think the opposite can be true too. I definitely think that the weight behind seeing die rolls, there's a reason, Dimension 20 does a Box of Doom, which is kind of meeting you halfway, where it's like you see the really important rolls,
Yeah.
and you don't see all the rolls.
Yeah. And I've done fate. I've definitely done that. And I do see the cool thing there. I have always thought of that as like this slow motion moment in the world where you like see your fate rolled out before you, right?
Yeah.
Like this is where, oh, I'm falling. There's a rope. I am off the cliff here unless I catch this. Make a dex save. And it's like everyone's heart is pounding. And I think that's back to the Captain America moment of like, oh no, it's over. He is pushing Stormbreaker into Thor's chest. If Thor dies, everything ends. Like Thor is clearly the strongest Avenger. It's over. And then it's like, all right, except for out of the left field, here comes a hammer, and it, roll 20, it wrecks his shoulder, knocking him off balance, which Actually, it pushes him forward, so it should have killed Thor anyway. But that's a different conversation, not for our D&D podcast. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that that's a cool concept. But I think that again, I think it's a weird thing where I do want it. I want more often than not for it to be behind the scenes.
Okay,
So
my turn.
Yeah, I was going to say
I'm taking
Josiah.
over the conversation. Here we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, we cut you off twice.
No, you're good. As a player, I don't care. I have so many things that I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my character. I am not looking at your dice rolls to figure out what your modifier is or what this character. Maybe that would be important to me, but a majority of the time, like that's just not something I'm going to be paying attention to.
Before
I
you
think-
move on from
Yep.
that, can I ask a clarifying question real quick?
Yeah.
Would you think, because he isn't, the take I heard earlier, he
Mhm.
wasn't saying they need to see every dice roll. It is that you roll them in the open, so you could see every dice roll.
Right.
And the difference there of like, I cannot fudge. If I wanted to, I can't fudge.
Right.
Because you can look over and say, that's not you didn't roll an 18 there. You rolled an 8. You know, like,
Yeah.
the accountability is often more what he's getting at.
So
would that change anything as a player? Just the fact that you could look.
I assume that's where it is anyways. And maybe that's a false assumption for me as a player. But if the DM rolled and it was like a nat 20, another nat 20, I as a player have this confidence of being like, there's no way you just rolled a third nat 20. Show me. You know what I mean?
I'm your DM, so it is possible.
Right. Yeah. You would roll 3 nat 20. But you know what I mean? And maybe that's a false understanding, and maybe I'm just wrong. But in general, I've never been worried about my DM cheating in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I also see the purpose of this game not for the point of the dice rolls. It's for the point of a story anyways.
Oh, interesting.
So if the DM wants that dice roll to be a 20, I trust him to tell the story in a way that is what he's trying to get across. So it is doing what it's supposed to do. Now, so that was the other thing that I was gonna say. Because as a player, I'm like, yeah, I don't care what you roll. Like if it hits, it hits. It doesn't matter. Now, if you're changing the AC of your guy when a second ago a 20 hit and now a 23 doesn't because you just want him to be stronger, now I'm upset because again, consistency is important to me.
I cast shield.
But that's like its own thing. Consistency is important, but that's because it's like, how did you get stronger? If you can explain it to me, he cast shield. Oh, great. Yeah. Okay. We're on the same page. You know what I mean?
Or like this gargantuan monster absorbs a ton of rock into its skin. And
that's where I'm at from a player standpoint. Because I'm like, the dice can do whatever the dice wants. I'm like, if you want to adjust them, you can fudge the dice all you want. That's not gonna change anything.
That doesn't feel different from shifting an AC around. That's crazy.
Fudging a dice
really
roll.
Interesting.
Fudging a dice roll. It would be weird if you fudged a dice roll that I could see. That would be weird to me. I would be like, why are you doing that? But if you have your dice covered, then I like expect you to fudge your dice rolls. That's just like, why else are you covering your dice?
Like
anyways,
way more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
Anyways, okay, from a DM perspective, because I have done some of that. I honestly, I will show you all of my dice rolls because for me, the dice, this comes back to a conversation about why do you have combat? Why do you have dice in your game? Why is there a level of like randomization to your games in the first place? For me, I'm playing D&D because I'm trying to tell you a story. I'm trying to get you involved into this thing. Combat, like often in the games that I'm running, which I say games, I'm running one shots. Combat is often a stepping stone to get to the next thing for me. So how that combat goes really doesn't matter. I'll adjust either way. You know, and they just like, so it's like, yeah, he dies. Oh yeah, he lives. You die. You know, like, I don't know. I'll adjust things too, and I'll try.
Interesting.
I failed on the back end. So for me, it's like, what happens with the dice, whether I roll them out in public or whether they're behind a screen, doesn't change anything for me. I'm not in the habit of fudging any dice rolls. I don't know why I would want to do that. As far as
Mhm.
like rolling a dice and being like, I failed or I succeeded, and you don't know what the check was. I'm really not running a lot of mystery in my games either. Like I think it's just anyways, I have not DM'd a
Interesting.
lot to the
I was
point
gonna
where
say,
that's like a big deal for me, but
yeah. You
yeah.
at one point said, I don't know why you would fudge dice rolls anyway. And I was like, I think that's because you haven't run more than one shots. Because it is when you have multiple, good DMs fudge dice because they're trying to help the players out. Good DMs are
Mhm.
like, I'm about ready to kill this player, and they're about ready to lose their character that they love and care about. And you feel that pressure at times as a DM. At least I
Yeah.
have. And that
Just kill the
often
character.
shows up in more long form content.
Kill the
And that's what
character.
I've come to is like,
Yeah.
I want to respect the dice. And that was the thing that really confused me. Like, it's okay, but in a lot of ways, you don't have a very deep respect for the dice as a part of this medium. Like, you're like, well, we're telling a story
Correct.
together. And I'm like, I don't want to just sit around and tell a story with you guys. I want to
Yeah.
play D&D, and there is a difference, and the big
I
difference
know
is
that
the
you
random
want that.
chance.
That's why I play with the dice. Because I know that you want that. Yeah, I toss
Oh,
around the
That's
little
so
rocks with
good.
numbers on
That's-
them.
well,
Oh,
yeah.
man.
I mean, and with that, I mean, I feel like there's
Yes.
not a
What a
better,
better
space
place
to
to
end
end.
than to just say,
I do this because I'm your friend.
Yeah.
I'd rather just sit around and tell stories with you.
yeah,
I
Oh,
like
man.
the randomness of it
oh
sometimes.
Man, we're going to have more to talk about after this. 'Cause
Yeah,
I don't
we-
think this conversation's over. I
No.
feel like other people may, we've gone long enough,
Yeah.
but I still have more questions.
We are
Holy cow.
definitely we're definitely at the end of our time here. Thank you guys so much for joining us for another Tales Improvised About the Table. As always, we don't claim to have all the answers. We also don't apparently agree on all of our answers. But we do love playing TTRPGs, and we will continue to talk about them. So yeah, please have a great rest of your week, and hope to see you next Friday.
See ya.
Bye.